What's up, guys? This is Quincy with Coin Club Crypto. Welcome to my channel. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe and talk about the topics with your friends if you like what we have to talk about today. Now, today we're going to be going over, well, this is an off-the-cuff video. So today we're going to be going over a kind of a little topic of mine, a little bit of a concern. It's Tether. Now, what's Tether? Now, Tether is a stablecoin, and a stablecoin is essentially a paired unit of value, usually some form of fiat value, that has some sort of representation or representational subset value of whatever the initial asset is, in this term, dollars. Now, there are different types of stable coins. Most stable coins are backed by whatever their fiat counterpart is, but they can also be backed by equities, and there are different other ways or even separate algorithms, but there are different ways that a stable coin can be backed to get that one-to-one dollar value for the assets that it's backed by. Now, Tether's an interesting situation because Tether got to the party first in regards to stablecoins. So Tether became quite big in the space back before anybody could really exchange dollars in the ecosystem. Because before that, if you had a chance to get your hands on some Bitcoin, then you can exchange that Bitcoin for other altcoins. But really, up until then, it was really hard to try to find certain exchanges that would be able to work in dollars very well, because most exchanges, at least offshore, didn't have the regulations involved to be able to have these standards set into place. So a lot of people just would go to the exchanges that did have the standards, buy Bitcoin, send it to the exchanges that didn't have the standards, and then proceed to buy other coins that weren't on the main exchanges. Now, Tether came in and sort of solved this problem in which people were able to hold fiat currency in a digital form and be able to exchange that over the network. And Tether primarily operates on the Ethereum network as an ERC20 token, but it doesn't necessarily have to only operate that way. That is just a technical structural format, mostly for broader liquidity purposes in the Ethereum ecosystem. But it could hypothetically exist in any format. It's just a representation of value that's in dollars. Now, my biggest concern with Tether isn't so much the idea of stablecoins. I actually think they are awesome. I think the thing with stablecoins is going to really bring in the new digital payment layer that's going to bring in like that fiat layer for people to make general payments and people to actually like operate online economies. That's cool. That's great. The biggest thing about Tether is there really is no accountability for Tether. So we'll get into a few different concepts of really what I believe is going on with Tether. Nothing's really come out further, mostly a lot of speculation, but the biggest thing is they haven't really had any audits in regards to the assets that are supposed to be collateralized by whatever the backing asset is, this in this scenario being dollars. And the audits that they have had haven't been a one-to-one comparison for their dollars, meaning that if people wanted to exchange their Tether for dollars, Tether wouldn't have the liquidity to do so. Now, this mostly goes into a general concept that I believe that Tether and other stablecoins can potentially be participating in due to the lack of regulatory framework that are in these environments. And here's why I'm saying this. And this isn't necessarily just a Tether problem. This is a stablecoin problem, but Tether really is at the center of all of it in regards to all the different activities that could be going. Not to mention Tether is the biggest, so it maintains a lot of liquidity in the space. Now, what are the Tether concerns? First Tether concern is, well, obviously the lack of auditing, but first is the printing money. Now you may be going, Quincy, we've heard the FUD. They're not printing money. There's no reason for them to be printing money, blah, 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 blah. There's a bunch of stuff. And I'm not even going to say that they're printing money here. I'm just going to say that there's a perfect opportunity for someone to capitalize off of printing money and get rich doing so because there's no framework to keep anybody from doing that. And I believe Tether and other stablecoins are doing something like that. So let me explain what I mean by printing fake money. And I'll get into the other aspect of that too, where it comes to fake demand and fake liquidity. But that really comes as a branch of the printing money. So what you're saying, they're printing money. How are they printing money? Well, I've got this little diagram over here sort of explaining kind of a 1, 2, 3 way of how you can print money and make billions of dollars doing it. And then essentially back the assets with the fake assets with real assets by being able to buy real assets with those fake assets. But let's get into it. So you have the coin that is produced. We have a Tether coin. you mint this coin out of nothing. Now, all you really have to do is say that it's backed, but let's say we wanted to be a little shisty and it's not backed. Shh, don't tell anybody this. So we print our original Tether coin. Let's say we printed 100 million of these, right? And we brought them into the ecosystem. And you got to remember, there are billions of coins in these ecosystems, so it's very, very, very easy to capitalize off of the movement and wealth and value in these networks. So we print 100 million Tether coins. We buy $100 million worth of crypto. Cool. Now we have two options here. Now we can either sell it or we can hold it. Now, if we sell it, we can actually go directly back into the assets so we can back the original asset that was never backed. So we could sell it for $100 million and have that $100 million of currency backed by the original Tether that was issued. That's cool. But what if we wanted to make some money, right? So what if I took that and instead of selling it, I just held on to it for a little bit, right? The crypto markets are very lucrative. You can have a 10% swing in an hour. So you hold it, you see a 20% gain. Cool. Then you sell. You basically capitalize on the difference of the profit you just made, back the original tokens that you had with the original capital that you've been able to make, pocket the profit, and you just made $20 million off of money that never existed. Quite interesting. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly what's going on. I'm just saying that if I was doing this, hell, who's going to stop me? And that's exactly the point. And this comes down to a whole regulatory thing in which what's the regulations on stablecoins going to be for this exact issue right here, for people essentially issuing money that never existed. And this also actually gets me into another point too, where you hear this a lot in the crypto space. So people like to talk about money laundering in the crypto space. And a lot of people seem to think that it has everything to do with like, oh, it's secret, or, oh, people use dollars to money launder. And I don't think people really get that. So let's go over that real quick too. So not only can you print fake money into existence and create a whole little ecosystem off that where you can get rich off of money that never existed, but you can also launder money that never existed in the first place in exchange for real money. So let's say I wanted to do this whole little setup here, but instead of doing it for myself, I wanted to do it for somebody I was laundering money for. So let's make this dramatic, and it's like big drug deals going down. You've got your cartel members on one side, you got your little nerds and analysts on another side. One cartel member drops $1 million in cash right there. Well, the money laundering isn't so much of them having some giant wicked process. It's this right here. I'll just print you $1 million in Tether that never existed, give it to you to sell it for crypto, have that crypto exchange for regular dollars, and boom, they're able to have their money, and you have that cash right there sitting in front of you. And I'm not saying this is exactly every situation. I'm saying it's just that easy. Like a 14-year-old could do this. That's how easy it is. So it's something to definitely be concerned of because people totally tend to dismiss it. But yeah, like a 4-year-old could do this. If you're just going to accept that token as being legitimate, then yeah, anybody could do that if there's no oversight for what can be done in regards to regulating these tokens in these ecosystems. Anybody, like I said, making millions of dollars off money that never existed. Now, let's get into the second portion of the problem, which is really the macro portion of the problem. This really sort of sets off the motion of what can become a spiraling problem that can totally lose control. But here's the actual problem that can actually spiral and lose control. So we have fake liquidity and fake demand. Now, one of the big things that's about Tether that's quite interesting was because it was one of the first stable coins to make it into the market, it was able to saturate the market the quickest. So right now, a good portion of the liquidity in the market, around 60%, are Tether, which means of all the exchanges happening in the market, around 60% of those exchanges are going in and out of Tether as a stable coin. Well, what ends up happening if you essentially had that fake money that you created in order to cash out in a crypto to sell for real money and then continue on profiting off of that? What happens when you realize, instead of holding it, what if I printed so many coins that I just pushed the price when I bought it? Yeah, if I printed so many of them and I pushed the price, why would I need to hold them? I can just sell immediately. Now, you may be going, isn't this a pump and dump? It's exactly a pump and dump. You're basically, and then what they're doing is they're taking their previous assets, backing them with the assets they're taking the made up assets, backing them with the real assets, and then pocketing the difference with the profit. Now, back to the overall volume problem. Now, where does this become a volume problem? Well, if 60% of the liquidity in the market, or a general percentage of the liquidity in the market, usually a substantial portion, is Tether, there's two huge problems with this. Well, one, there's overall faith in Tether. So you've got to remember, at the end of the day, the value of Tether is only backed by the dollars it's able to be redeemed. And if people all of a sudden felt scared that they weren't able to get their dollar back in Tether, and it doesn't even have to be people, it can be exchanges, it can be whoever is providing the majority of liquidity to Tether, If they feel like, hey, look, the money that we're using here is almost like monopoly money, and we're afraid that we won't even be able to get fiat from you, that could cause a cascading event, not only in Tether but in the broader markets. Because you got to remember, if Tether's 60% of the liquidity, and I've got this little drawing here to explain. So if Tether's 60% of the liquidity, and you took all of that and wiped it out, either A, due to a loss in faith event, or B, due to Tether continuously printing money and getting caught when it comes to regulatory concerns, and then essentially a basically a regulation being put into place saying that certain stable coins that aren't in the certain parameters that are being placed forth in these regulatory standards are essentially going to be considered illegal, which would do the same thing. Poof, gone. It might as well no longer exist just because of regulatory concerns. So either it can be a general loss in faith, or it can be a regulatory nightmare in regards to what can be done with these tokens. And the biggest issue with that is if Tether was an American company, or if even Tether was operating with regulators in a lot of the major countries, this wouldn't be too much of a problem. But Tether resides in Hong Kong on top of Bitfinex. And I'll get more into Bitfinex and why all of this is important. So Tether is in Hong Kong, and you can go way more into that in regards to investigating sort of the background of Tether. But Tether being based in Hong Kong sort of gives them this leeway internationally to sort of not quite do exactly what they want, but they can really operate outside of everyone except really in Hong Kong, which is a lot more freer than we are. But the biggest thing here is, well, if they're doing all of this, how are they doing all of this? And this is where Bitfinex comes into play. Now, I'm not going to go too far into Bitfinex. You can watch CoffeeZilla's video about that, going into the relationship between Tether and Bitfinex, and I'll have his link in the description. But Bitfinex, the biggest thing that's quite interesting is it acts as a perfect on-ramp for Tether. One, because they're primarily owned by the same people, and two, they're located in the same place, and they have a lot of governing concerns in regards to their relationship too between the two entities. So you've got opportunity by having Tether as an organization operate off in an exchange that's located and owned by the same people that operate it. You have all the opportunity to essentially print money and then back the money you printed by the real assets you bought, and then capitalize off the difference in regards to profit. And then you could prop up the markets by essentially just printing up as much as you can, pushing up the price, cashing out, and you can. And that's the thing, you don't have to cash out all at once. You got to remember, these are cryptocurrencies. So I wouldn't doubt that they would be buying, holding on to them for quite a while as they continuously push the price, because why sell if you're going to keep on printing to keep pushing the price up? You're just getting richer and richer and richer, like I said, off of money that never existed. Now, these are all just general concerns. I'm not saying that this is everything that's going on, but this is something that people don't talk about in regards to, well, what the hell is going on? There's not a lot of transparency into what a lot of these companies are doing, primarily because, well, no one's going to come out and say, well, you see here, we're actually just taking advantage of the markets because nobody's telling us we can't. Like, it's not going to work like that. So a lot of this comes down to a bit of being my own conjecture, but my biggest thing at the end of the day is saying, if somebody could, why shouldn't they?